When Havoc Struck. Brought to you by Mobil Corporation.
Thousands of minor earthquakes surface daily from somewhere deep within our restless planet, gently pen their seismic signatures, and disappear. But major tremors are another matter. These strike without mercy and often without warning. They are among the most destructive of all the forces of nature. In 100 years, earthquakes have left a $50,000 million trail of damage and caused the loss of almost 2 million human lives.
At this Hollywood studio in 1933, they were shooting a scene for a movie called International House. The star of the movie was W.C. Fields. And while they were shooting, something happened that wasn't written into the script.
Speed! 46, take 1. Action!
Young man, you probably saved my life. Now what can I do for you?
Take us to Shanghai.
Shanghai?
Yeah. What's the matter? Earthquake! Earthquake! Quick!
Take your time, folks. Now, everybody walk easy. It's all right now. It's all right. All right, okay. Everybody.
When the dust is settled, W.C. Fields calmed his nerves with a double martini and went back to his job of making people laugh. But a short distance from here, right down there in Long Beach, 120 people would never laugh again. They were crushed under $50 million worth of rubble. Now, since 1933, there have been other earthquakes around here, and we know there will be more in the future. Because you see, California is earthquake country. Now, in 100 years, this state has suffered $6.75 billion worth of damage from earth tremors. The worst single disaster hit San Francisco in 1906. That cost alone came to $1.25 billion. Now, here at MGM, they made a movie about it and captured something of the horror of those few seconds when, at 5:16 on April the 18th, the streets of San Francisco, and they pitched, and the city just tumbled down.
Camera could have filmed such scenes, but they did record the nightmare that followed. For the fire department, the situation was hopeless. Its hydrants were shattered by the earthquake. There would be no water to put out the many fires kindled by fallen chimneys and exploding gas mains. Soon, they had become an all-consuming holocaust. Then, the Army marched in with dynamite to blast fire breaks in the path of the flames. They succeeded only in starting even more fires. San Francisco burned for 3 days. Before the bricks had cooled, people returned to gaze on the remains of 30,000 buildings. Nearly 500,000 people lived in San Francisco, yet only 500 had been killed. One was the fire chief, Danny Sullivan. He had always warned that the water mains would go in a major earthquake, but city officials refused to listen. You see, there was no percentage in water mains. Now this was the payoff.
one can predict exactly when they will strike. But most earthquakes occur where there are deep cracks or faults in the Earth's crust. Now, I'm standing on one right now. It's the famous, notorious San Andreas Fault, which fractures California's coastal region for over 600 miles, coming ashore down there near the Mexican border. It comes north, past Los Angeles, through there towards San Francisco and beyond, before disappearing once again beneath the sea. Now, these fault lines occur when two of the many vast plates of crustal rock that roam the Earth come together and collide. Where they rub against each other, the edges can get locked together in places, and motivating forces deep within our planet drives them on. And when the strain becomes too great, the rock snaps and the ground just vibrates, and you have what we call an earthquake. Now, in 1906, the destruction of San Francisco began with a rapid movement along parts of the San Andreas Fault of up to 20 feet. Incidentally, Los Angeles, which stands along this side of the fault, is moving toward San Francisco on that side at about 2 inches a year. So if we hang around here for about 10 million years, the Golden Gate Bridge should end up somewhere over there.
San Francisco today, bigger, taller, more populous than in 1906, but still as vulnerable to earthquakes. If an earthquake struck during rush hour, 100,000 could be killed. The city has plans to meet such a disaster. A well-equipped fire department, extra strong water mains, and underground reservoirs. It also has the strictest building codes in America. These skyscrapers should not fall down. The trouble is, the only test of a quake-resistant building is an earthquake. In the San Fernando Valley near Los Angeles, an earthquake hit the Veterans Hospital. Here, the new quake-resistant buildings stood. The older ones, instant rubble. 100 patients and staff were somewhere underneath. Away, part of the Van Norman Dam had collapsed. Only the earthwork held back 11 million tons of water. But that, too, was crumbling. 80,000 people were given just 1 hour to leave the area. But first, they had to find a way out on a freeway that wasn't destroyed.
Traffic on the Golden State Freeway, northbound and southbound, Roxford to a point 2 miles south, is dangerous due to major damage.
Dead bodies in automobiles would have to wait. Priority went to the Veterans Hospital.
He's tagged. Yeah, he's got tagged down here on his foot, and I've taken his wristwatch. George Lang, and he's had Demerol twice.
45 of the victims were beyond human help. But every now and then they came across a miracle.
Hey, we got a live one. Now wait, let her relax. Just back there a minute, and now I'll get my leg out of the way, okay?
That's an awful nice leg right now.
Here she comes. All right. There I go.
You want to go back? That's my mother.
Yeah. Been laying down on my. Here's your daughter, honey. Right here, waiting for. Here's your daughter, Helen.
It's okay, baby. Did they get slipped?
Hey, everybody, be quiet. Sit down now. Just bend your knees slowly.
Wait a minute.
Slowly.
Where's Heidi? Heidi's with Jim. No, he took her with her, and the dogs are down in that Orland. Okay. It's all right. It's okay.
It was a good day for miracles. At the dam, the water had been held long enough for them to drain it out of danger. Just one extra tremor, the experts say, and the whole dam would have gone for sure. Follow the same fault system that brought havoc to San Fernando, 1,000 miles north along the coast of America, and you'll find Anchorage, the capital of Alaska. Like their forefathers who carved this city out of the wilderness, the Alaskans know all about earthquakes. It takes a heck of a lot to shake them. But on that Good Friday in March of 1964, they shook.
I thought this was the end of the world. Whatever the end of the world was going to be like, this must be it. The street itself was moving like waves on the ocean. They were constantly, and you could look down the street and see these giant waves, and I kept thinking to myself, concrete can't do that, but it did it.
Anchorage had been visited by shock waves from the most violent earthquake ever recorded in America.
Lady and a couple of children went by, and they said, I wonder if there's anyone in that car. And I called out because I wanted them to know that I was there. And they said that they were sure that help would be right along.
And help was right along for her, and anyone else who needed it. Prompt reaction to the disaster by rescue teams helped to keep the death toll down to 115. Not many when you think that this quake was equivalent to 1,200 atomic bombs. Anchorage had its share of casualties, but the exclusive residential area of Turnagain was the worst hit.
I was just about to drive into our driveway when this started. I didn't know what it was. I thought perhaps it was an atomic bomb. It was a terrible vibration. Trees started coming down, telephone poles, and our driveway just flowed out into the sea. I tried to get out of the car, and at that point, the car and I started going up into the air, vibrating and shaking all the way up to about 30 feet. From there, I viewed the rest of Turnagain, and I thought, well, this is an amazing thing that I'm going up when everything else is going down and flowing out into the ocean.
The walls of the house started slamming back and forth, buckling. Our fireplace was beginning to collapse in the living room. I tried to open the front door, and the door was pinched, and you couldn't pull the door open. So I put my foot against it, and then I grabbed the knob, and I pushed out, and finally the door gave, and I ran out in the front yard. At that moment, our house was just totally demolished. I watched the frame of the house just kind of go into kind of a kindling pile.
We had a large beam in our house, and it fell right in front of me. And then I looked over at the walls, and the wall just gave away. And I could get up and step outside. And so I did. And when I got outside, I wondered what I was doing outside. Because all along the bluff, as far as I could see, were these deep, deep furrows, like a giant plow had just gone through. And then I saw a helicopter coming, and I had all these curlers in my hair. So, being a woman, I took all the curlers out and I just dropped them and fluffed my hair out, and they just pulled me up into the helicopter.
When you see trees like a platoon of soldiers moving without tilting even, you just get so you can't believe what you're looking at. And with the trees doing all these things, I figured I should get in an open area. And as I moved, I fell into a crevasse that opened up as I was moving. And then instead of the earth closing up, the earth kept opening up until I was in a deep ravine with lots of daylight and everything rolling in on me. All kinds of dirt, big balls like boulders of frozen dirt rolling around, and all sorts of things coming at you. There was even barbed wire and piping and all sorts of things that you don't know where it came from. I remember seeing a mailbox somewhere along the line. Everything was mixed up. And after the thing was over and I was alone here in utter desolation, then you begin to wonder, am I going to be the Mr. Atom, the one man left? Is the whole world gone?
And I got out of the car and I looked and there was nothing. The road just stopped. And this young skiing friend of ours was there, and he told me Perry had jumped just as the earth opened, and Perry had fallen into the earth, and the earth then closed. But we did try to find the baby, but we could not find him. He was never found.
The damage from this earthquake came to $750 million, 100 times as much as it cost to buy the whole of Alaska from the Russians a century before. But what are statistics to those who have lost their homes and their loved ones? In the numbness that surely follows an earthquake, these Alaskans could only be grateful for their lives. But with the sad exodus came the sense of loss, the despair of knowing almost everything they possessed was gone.
Where are we going to stay, Marnia? We don't stay here. You're real welcome to stay. We haven't got a thing. We haven't got a home. We haven't got a shop. We haven't... Where are you going? I don't know where I'm going.
Where's straighten her up now, Gal. Get up.
Daddy, honey, I promise you that we'll take Tippy and we'll fly him out to you. Okay? He'll be there within a week as soon as your mommy will tell us where you're at. Okay?
Now don't cry. You're facing a nice trip.
Hey, Roy.
The people of Turnagain had seen the earth open beneath their feet. But to the south, an even worse horror had struck. A gigantic wall of water built up by convulsions on the ocean bed had shattered the entire coastline. The monstrous wave destroyed everything afloat, with one incredible exception. That day, before the earth moved, the bustling little port of Valdez to the east of Anchorage was going about its business. Everyone was cheerful because it was Good Friday and a holiday weekend ahead. In the harbor, the steamship Chena was unloading the last of her cargo. On board, one of the crew was standing on deck trying out his new 8mm movie camera. Random shots, just anything that took his fancy. Then... on the Chena, the sailor somehow managed to keep the camera rolling as the harbor floor caved in. when the waters receded, in the landscape of desolation, not a trace of the wharf, nor any of those who'd been standing on it was to be seen. And the Chena? Pitched and tossed like a rubber duck, she hit the harbor floor 3 times. Then she was hoisted back out to sea by the returning wave and her captain's unbelievable skill. In Japan, where earthquakes are almost a way of life, they did succeed in 1966 in predicting and actually filming an earthquake in the town of Matsushiro. Now, this was the first time a camera had been set up in anticipation of the event. But it's not such a breakthrough as all that, because around that time, Matsushiro was getting hundreds of tremors a day. This is the computer room of a seismic lab near Los Angeles in Southern California.
You know, some 550 million people around the world are living with the risk of earthquakes. And research into their prediction has taken on a new urgency in America, Russia, and Japan. In 1975 and 1976, the Chinese were fortunate enough to be able to evacuate towns before Havoc struck and saved many lives. But unfortunately, they missed the big one, and an estimated 750,000 people perished. Now, some scientists believe that accurate predictions will be possible within 10 years. But knowledge of impending disaster is obviously, well, it's not enough. We must also have well-organized civil defense departments, shake-resistant buildings, populations prepared to cooperate when earthquake warnings are given, and officials bold enough to issue those warnings. For in a democratic country like America, if deaths occurred during a panic-stricken evacuation which had been triggered by a false alarm, the legal consequences could be, well, enormous. But whatever he does, man will never completely conquer the earthquake menace. But in the future, we can hope at least to see them relegated to the lower league of natural hazards.